Hello, hello.
Hello.
I think we are a few seconds early here, so we'll give it a few seconds or maybe a minute or two for everybody to join. I see people have started to join. We're just gonna wait for a bit more so that we give a chance for most of the people who signed up for the webinar to get in. Okay, I think we can get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever in the world you're joining in, whatever the time it is for you. It's great to have you on this webinar with Netdata. I'm Sham. I'm the VP of Product and Strategy at Netdata, and with me I have Juan. Um, it's
Hello.
yeah, it's thanks Juan. Thanks for being here. Um, it's we're going to be talking about how Netdata AI can now talk to the other tools that you might have in your environment, in your ecosystem, and how this will enable you to find root cause faster, troubleshoot faster. And we're also going to explain how this works. And Juan will be showing you a demo of this in action in real time. So this is the agenda for today. And as usual, if you have questions, you can drop it in. We'll pull them up either during the session, if it's something that needs to be addressed immediately, or towards the end, we'll have some time dedicated for Q&A. Okay, so let's dive in. So the background behind this, the reason why this exists is there is a gap in terms of how observability and monitoring and troubleshooting generally works. So alerting is something that all these monitoring platforms offer for good reason. An alert tells you what changed, what exactly happened, what trigger was hit, but it very rarely tells you the why behind it. Of course, really good alerts try to do that, but it can't fully answer the why, because that answer usually needs context that exists elsewhere. For example, some of that context might be in your GitHub, in your GitLab, and wherever your code and your deployments are hosted. For example, there was a deployment that shipped that triggered a latency spike. So you need to have that context about what happened. Similarly, you could have incidents that live on PagerDuty, or you have a ticket open for this on Jira. Maybe you've had past issues that are similar in nature that the team has already investigated. All of this is context that your monitoring tool generally doesn't have with it right away. And of course, there's run books and wikis and informations and guides about what to do in these sort of scenarios, what not to do. That this is institutional knowledge or tribal knowledge that your team has built over time, and it's usually available somewhere, but it might not be always the first thing that the person who's on call is reaching for. They might not know it exists. They might be somebody new to the team, or maybe there's so much content that's been built up in this wiki over time that uh, it's not clearly evident where to look for and what. And of course, if you're troubleshooting something in the middle of the night because you're on call, it's very hard to keep all of these different things in mind and ready to go. So the idea that we had is how can you bring this all in together without having to build in the functionality of these various other tools into Netdata? So we think that purpose-built tools are important, um, and it's not going to be a one tool that does everything environment that most people operate in. But it's also important that users shouldn't have to context switch across a whole bunch of different tools and different browser windows and tabs just to solve a specific thing that they're looking for. So, how can you do that in one place while keeping all your other tools? This is the thought from which this entire feature that we're talking about came from. So, fundamentally, what it does is Netdata AI is now an MCP client, and it was already an MCP server. And MCP, for those who do not know, is an acronym for Model Context Protocol. It's a way in which AI systems can access data in a structured manner. So the data could be any kind of data, any kind of context that the AI needs to do its job better. And the protocol allows a way to access this data in a more optimal and efficient manner. So for example, here at a high level, we talk about what this means. So Netdata already sees per second metrics, logs, processes, network state, all of our anomaly detection information, alerts. All of this is already visible to Netdata. But what's currently not visible to Netdata, but is visible to the other tools in your ecosystem, are things like code changes and deployments, incident timelines, runbooks, documentation, tickets, chats, all of this accumulated history and context that you have in your organization over time, which we think is really, really going to be useful for, sorry, for troubleshooting and investigating these issues. So, how can you run one investigation that uses both sides of these data points and tries to answer the problem in a better way? So, how this would be set up in practice would be you would be able to connect MCP servers. You can choose which ones you want Netdata AI to talk to. We would discover what tools are offered from these MCP servers, and then the context can flow between the two tools. So we'll deep dive into this during the demo. So in today's demo, we're going to be talking about these specific things. Juan, maybe you want to jump in here.
Yes. So yeah, in today's demo, we are going to talk about how we can do a troubleshooting and investigation with our Netdata AI agent and adding some different tools, MCP servers that we have, connect to MCP servers so it can get more context that can help us do this investigation and find root causes or the reason why something is off. I have prepared a demo environment. Uh, Probably, Sham, you can go to share my screen.
Sure. I think yeah. I think let's jump into the live demo. But I just want to say before we go there that uh, these are some specific examples of how Netdata can talk to specific tools that we're going to be talking about here: GitHub, Jira, and Confluence. But it's not limited to this. You can connect Netdata AI to all kinds of other tools as well using the MCP protocol, and we'll talk briefly about that as well. So let's jump into the live demo. I'm going to pull up your screen now, Juan.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so for this demo, we have prepared an environment. It's a very small one. I mean, just to illustrate what we can do with this. Basically, our agent will have access to different servers or services from the customer, like Jira, Confluence, and GitHub. And this demo environment consists on a Kubernetes cluster for a small shop. And this shop has some microservices. And we will see that in our investigation that some fix has been released but this is having some unusual behavior. So let me first jump into Netdata interface so you can see how to configure MCP servers in there. Um, in your spaces, you can go, well, just a disclaimer that this is not yet in production. We plan to release in the following days, so you don't have still access to this, but in the following days we will release it publicly.
Yeah, and if anybody is interested in getting beta access, please reach out to us at product@netdata.cloud, and we'd be happy to set you up. But like Juan mentioned, in a few days it should be available.
Mhm. So we will include a new MCP connections option in the configuration where you will see some new integrations. So initially we have configured and have predefined access for these three integrations: GitHub, PagerDuty, and Atlassian. That includes Jira and Confluence. But also you will have access to a custom MCP server configuration where you can configure any MCP server that you have access publicly and that requires a bearer token. So basically for this you will just need to set your MCP server
Juan,
URL.
could you zoom in? Juan,
Oh
could you zoom in a
yes,
bit? I think the
yes. Sorry,
text might be a bit hard to see.
it's better now. Yeah, I think so. Okay.
Yeah, much better.
So for the demo, I'm going to configure the ones that our environment will use in order to troubleshoot the issue. So we said that we would use Atlassian with Jira and Confluence. So in order to configure this, basically you will just need to select the authentication method for this integration that will be OAuth. Uh, I can explain later what OAuth means for those who are not familiar with this term. So just selecting the Atlassian products that you want to give access, you want to have access from Netdata, and then login. This will redirect you to the Atlassian login page where you will need to accept and grant the access from Netdata to your organization. You can see here that um, we are only requesting read and search permissions. Um, Initially, all our MCP servers that we will configure in Netdata, we will only have read access. So Netdata won't have write access to any external service. So you can use it only to search and retrieve information. So after the permission is granted and the login process succeeds, you will see the list of tools that the remote MCP server from Atlassian is sharing. So you will have this. As you can see, all the tools are for getting information or for searching information. But even for some admins that don't want all the tools to be available, you could also disable some of them if you want. This means that Netdata AI won't have access to the tools that are disabled by the admin. So I will grant access to all of them and save changes. As I was mentioned before, OAuth means that every user in your space will need to log in with Atlassian in order to use this MCP server. This means that each user will see what they can see in your Atlassian installations, in your Atlassian organizations. So the permissions to read different parts of Jira or Confluence will depend on the user that is accessing Netdata AI. So let's add the other one. For this, we will need GitHub. GitHub also, we will have added support for personal access token and OAuth. In this case, I will use a personal access token that basically is bearer token. You generate that token in GitHub, and you can pass it, and you can configure the integration so all your users will use this access. Here the same. Here you can see something different from before. It's like GitHub server exposes all tools, even the great tools, uh, even if we don't request them in the scopes, but MCP server from GitHub exposes all of them. As you can see, these ones are not selectable because MCP server is listing them not as read-only tools. So not read-only tools will not be available to be enabled. That's why I was mentioning that from Netdata, you will have only access. Netdata will only have read
Yeah.
access to your organizations.
I,
So
Juan, I think there is a question about what you were showing. Let me just bring it up on the screen. It's from Justinas. So the question is it possible to have only in local LAN available MCP server without authentication methods? In other words, MCP being accessed only from the servers, or it can have access initiated from Netdata agent.
Currently, we don't support local access. I mean, if you can configure your server and make it public in your LAN with a public, I mean, with a static IP or a public domain, you could configure a custom MCP server, but always with authorization and also with an HTTPS connection. We also don't accept remote endpoints that are not HTTPS.
Thanks, Juan.
Okay.
And before you proceed, I just want to fill in some context for those who might be new to the concept of MCP. So Netdata Cloud currently already acts as an MCP server, which means that you can connect your AI clients like Cloud Code or Codex or ChatGPT or Gemini or any of these tools to Netdata Cloud so that you can continue using your AI tools or AI agents and talk about data that Netdata has access to. What we're talking about here is the other way around, where Netdata AI is the client and the servers are your own tools, right? So things like GitHub, things like Atlassian, Confluence, PagerDuty, and other things. So we're talking about how it accesses data that is owned by these other tools or resides in these other tools, and that's where the permissions of what tools are allowed or not allowed. We're being very careful about this. So currently, it's only read-only. Even though it might be nice to have write permissions for some cases, for example, for updating a Jira ticket, but currently we are only doing read-only. So even though those tools might be available on your MCP server, Netdata only supports read-only tools. And again, we give granular permission so that the admins can select what is allowed and what is not allowed. Sorry, Juan.
Yeah,
Please
no,
go ahead.
exactly. Thanks for the clarifications. So once we have our MCP servers configured, so let's go to our environment. Um, and here, for example, I can show you, for example, what a typical day would mean for one of us, for one engineer that is working on an organization like this fictional company for the shop. So the thing is that probably you have your Jira issues and you work on some of them. You have the information here, then you connect with some PRs in GitHub, etc. And in this case, for example, let's imagine that one engineer has just released the fix for this issue. This issue, fictional, consists on that it was identified that our payment service was charging twice customers that were retrying the checkout operation. So
Again, it would be good if you zoom in a little bit, Juan.
yes, sorry. Okay. So let's imagine that an engineer worked on this, released this, let me copy the link to this. And after she has released the new fix of this service, he goes to Netdata. And then this fix, in order to avoid charging twice, what this was doing is adding a cache for all the checkout requests in order to remove duplicates in case some user clicked twice on the button. So after looking at this, this engineer goes probably to some metrics that has been introduced by this payment service. Some of them, for example, are metrics that are for the cache memory. Let me select a longer interval. And then for the new cache memory, he start seeing this kind of charts. So it starts a conversation with AI, and it says, referencing this chart, and it says, I have just released the fix for this ticket, but I see memory growing. Could you analyze the code to see if you find the root case, the root cause? As you can see in the conversation, I have enabled the two MCP servers that I configured before. So Atlassian, the Netdata AI will have access to Atlassian and to GitHub. So as you can see, just pasting the URL of the ticket I was working on, Netdata AI understands that this is a Jira issue, fetch the information from it. So you can see here all the information of the tool response from Atlassian, and then starts analyzing it. You saw in the ticket that we also were referencing the PR in GitHub, so automatically goes to GitHub, fetch the pull requests. Also, it's fetching metric data associated to the metric that we referenced. Also, just for those that are using Netdata AI for the first time, everything that the user sees on the screen is also visible for the AI as context. So the Netdata AI understands what the user is also seeing on its request. So, and it found the root cause. Basically, it found that the cache that we added in this fix is unbounded. So that's why memory is constantly growing. It also shows you the code of the fix and why it's growing. So it explains you the cause of this issue. As we mentioned, Netdata won't have access to GitHub, but it has access to the code. So we can tell, can you draft a patch for this commit? So we can ask the LLM to try to draft a patch for the issue that we have and try to create a fix that we can later apply. So you can see that LLM can have access to the file contents directly. It knows that this main file was touched due to the PR, and automatically can generate patches with the code that would try to fix this issue. Okay, this is okay. Just I don't want to dig into all the technical details about the patches, etc. But just to illustrate that LLM can do this kind of analysis, and also, for example, here is recommending to add a TTL for the cache, etc., and reduce the size per entry, etc. Also, we can ask, for example, in some situations, we would like to ask if we have had this issue before. So we can ask the LLM, have we had similar OM issues in the past for this service. This automatically makes the LLM to search for past issues in the reports and also to search for issues in Jira, for example, that could reference this service. Um, the power of these MCP servers also relies of the kind of tools that the different providers will allow. For example, as you can see, Jira exposes tools that allows you to have like a query language in order to find information. This is very powerful and can help, for example, find very specific things in big amounts of information. So it found something. So it found this Jira issue that was also related with an OOM that killed services in the past.
So this
Also,
sort of thing could also be very useful for example, support engineers who are trying to troubleshoot an issue, or again, they're on call, they're looking at something. Uh, Even if they don't need to go to the code level details in GitHub, for example, like Juan was showing, it would really be useful to them to understand, has a similar issue happened before? Is there any guide or wiki that has information about solving issues like this, or what information to collect in this case? So again, they could just say, for this specific alert, or this anomaly here, or this spike in the data, they can just ask, what is relevant about these sort of cases.
mhm, exactly, and related with what you mentioned about having other sources of information like a wiki page. For example, in this case, we could use it for in order to retrieve like a rollback procedure. In this case, I can say to the LLM, uh, I don't before applying the fix. I would like to roll back this version, but I don't remember the rollback procedure. I think we have something in Confluence. Let me check. So this allows also to retrieve information that exists in big amounts of data sources uh, in order to perform different actions. So as you see, it also found that we have a runbook in Confluence that it also links to it that can help us do the rollback before applying the fix. Also, it understands that currently the best version is the previous one because it also analyzed the commit history and it understood that it found that there is the previous version was this one, and also summarizes the rollback procedure in order to provide this information to the user. So this is the kind of things that we can do with MCP, different MCP servers connected to Netdata AI. I also wanted to show that this not only applies to conversations. You can also use MCP servers in order to generate reports, and I think this is very powerful, in my opinion, uh, not only for single reports but also for scheduled reports. So you have the possibility to schedule at a different frequency the one that you want, um, to do some automatic analysis. So for example, you can schedule daily to analyze the logs, analyze deployments, and this can correlate different information, different sources in order to find incidents, to create reports warning users or warning about any trend, etc. So, yeah. That's it.
I think there's a question. Let me just bring it up one. So it's from Elitech, and the question is, would this feature be available for Netdata on-premise deployment? So we've been getting these questions in general about Netdata AI, and so what we're working on right now, which should be available soon, is if you're running Netdata Cloud on-prem, then you should be able to connect it to uh, an AI provider that's hosted either by you or elsewhere that you already have access to. So, for example, some of our users and customers have they're already using either Anthropic's models or OpenAI models or other models, um, but they still have the need or the requirement to run Netdata Cloud on-prem, which means that you could configure the access. So we will have some way to configure the access so that instead of hitting Netdata's AI models or the models that we directly use, you can connect them to your APIs, whatever is available. We will have recommendations on which models to configure because for certain tasks, certain models do a much better job than the others, and we are relying on mostly some of the more advanced models. So yeah, so the answer to this question is yes, it's possible. It requires some additional configuration, and we're working with a few customers as I speak regarding exactly this. Yeah, back to you, Juan. Or are you done with the demo?
Yeah, the demo is finished. If you have any additional question, I'm happy to answer them, to try to answer them.
Yeah, sure. I think yeah, let keep the questions coming if you have any questions about anything specifically that Juan was demonstrating, or even slightly related to this topic, or anything related to Netdata at all. We'd be happy to try and answer it here. So let me jump back to the other slide for a second. So we spoke about GitHub and Confluence and Jira, and you saw PagerDuty as one of the other pre-supported kind of connections there. But as you probably already know, there's MCP servers for anything that you can think of nowadays. So the possibilities are endless in terms of what kind of context and what kind of data and information you could bring in to make your troubleshooting, your root cause analysis, whatever you're using Netdata for, much more powerful. And when Juan was using it, you could see that it was able to make those correlations. It was able to understand what the user is asking for and pull the right kind of data. And it was pretty snappy too. It was really fast in getting the right data in there. So in your case, that data might be residing on Slack, for example, Sentry, Notion, Google Drive. There's a whole bunch of other places where the data could exist, and this is just a snapshot. It's not a list. It's not a full list. There's hundreds of MCP servers out there. You could have your own MCP servers for tools that are built in house. So that's a possibility as well. So before we wrap up here and take any final questions, I just want to talk briefly about what is coming up next. So what we're trying to do here is lay the foundations for fully autonomous AI SRE agent that can um, really do the work that you assign it on a long time horizon. It can go be independent and only pull you in for things that actually need your oversight, and it shouldn't pull you in for things that are going to waste your time. So for this, the MCP client feature that we are talking about here, the ability to connect to these other tools in your ecosystem is very key because uh, a real person who's using Netdata, for example, or any other monitoring tool to troubleshoot something or to make sure that their infrastructure is running properly, they're not just looking at that monitoring dashboard. They're looking at other tools. They're looking at historical context about what happened. They're asking things to their teammates. There's a whole bunch of there's a lot of things that go around it, and the monitoring dashboard is just one small piece of it. So the first step is, how can we make Netdata AI approximate that behavior by having it connect to all these different tools so that it knows more than just what the monitoring dashboard is telling it. So that's what this feature is all about. The next layer is what we call the memory and the context layer. So how do you make Netdata AI learn on the job, right? So this is something humans do all the time. We don't even think about it. We just pick up on stuff. We call it experience. We learn from the teammates, and the next time we face an issue, we have this context that we've built over time, and we can do things better. We can do things more efficiently, more optimally. AI, as you already know, it usually lives from one conversation context to another. So even though some of the more modern tools have some concept of memory, it's again limited to user level stack about what individual users spoke to it about. What we're trying to do here is have the ability for, first of all, your admins to provide context about what is it that this infrastructure is supposed to do, what is important for it, what is not important for it, what are the best practices, things like that. And then secondly, how can it learn over time? So from every troubleshooting incident that's happened, feedback from the user about was this root cause analysis accurate or not, how can it learn, how can it improve over time? And again, the information from these other tools across your ecosystem is actually really useful for this process of learning by itself and improving. So this, we believe, is the next important bit that Netdata AI needs to actually reach to the autonomous mode. Because what we ideally want is that you always have an AI SRE that's investigating continuously and not just looking for problems, but it's not just proactive about things, but it's just looking at things all the time. Are there more optimal ways to do this? Did this deployment cause any issues, even if an alert has not triggered? Or if an alert has triggered, it's looking at it, whether it's false positive or not, whether it's false negative, whether it's an actual issue. And then if it thinks that it's something that's really important, it pulls you in. Otherwise, if it's already has information from Jira or PagerDuty or Slack, then it doesn't need to pull you in. So all of these things happening kind of in a 24/7 per second basis. But to get there in a way that actually is useful and repeatable and is cost effective, we need all these building blocks that we're building. So we believe that we can get here pretty soon. There are some pilot customers that we're working with to arrive here as well. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting next few months while we go from reactive to proactive and enter autonomous mode. So that's it from us. This one was a shorter one, relatively, compared to our other webinars. If you have any other questions, please let us know, and we will be making an announcement once the feature is publicly available. But like I mentioned earlier, if you need beta access, we'd be happy to work with you. Just reach out to us, um, and we can share access. And for anyone who is new to Netdata, you can always get started at our website, netdata.cloud, or you can jump in straight into the app at app.netdata.cloud. You can check out the documentation at learn.netdata.cloud. And of course, you can check out our GitHub repo, which is inching towards 80,000 stars right now. Hopefully, we get there in the next few days. So I think there's another question. Let me bring it up on screen. So the question is, for starters who just downloaded the open source version of Netdata, does the open source version on GitHub have access to AI and MCP use? So maybe I can go first, and Juan, you can add any other thoughts. So the Netdata open source agent does have access to the AI, the MCP server functionality. So it is an MCP server of its own. So you can connect your own AI clients and tools to it. It does not have access to the MCP client feature that we just talked about, because that is specifically built into Netdata Cloud, not on the agent. It's a much more heavier processing load as well for all these other features, that running it on the agent on the device for all functionality wouldn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the agent exposes an MCP server that you can use in order, for example, with other clients like Open Code, Codex, Cloud Code, etc. You can connect to Netdata agent through them, but it does not have like the Netdata agent implemented inside Netdata. That's something that we only have on cloud.
Yeah. And another thing for anybody who has tried out Netdata AI, especially the investigations, the insights tab that you see in Netdata, if you tried it out in the past, I would recommend giving it another spin, because there's been a lot of improvements recently. That the level, the quality of the troubleshooting and the quality of the reports has improved by leaps and bounds. And there's also a lot more functionality that we've built in, that you can converse with a report. You can if you see something in a report that you don't agree with, you can ask, why is this? You can create a conversation from it and keep that dialogue going. Let me see. There's another question from Jose Garcia. It needs to buy AI credits, or I connect my API key. You want to take this one, Juan?
Yes, currently Netdata AI on cloud, you need to buy credits. We also grant 10 free credits per month to business users. So you can use those 10 credits and buy extra ones. Currently, we don't support connecting your own API key. Your own API key is if you use uh, another client and you connect to MCP server of Netdata, not using Netdata AI. I think also, well, in the future we also plan to offer different methods.
Yeah,
Probably Sham, you can.
yeah, this is something, yeah, this is something that we are considering, about sort of a bring your own API key, bring your own key approach. um, it's not available yet, but we hope we can provide this in the future. And I would also like to say that if there's anybody on the community plan, or on a free plan of any kind, that wants to try it out and you don't have AI credits, so you're not able to do it, please reach out to us on the same email that I mentioned earlier, which is product@netdata.cloud. We'd be happy to bump you on a trial and give you some credits so that you can play around with it, experiment with it, and share your feedback. We're just going to wait for a few more seconds to see if there are any further questions. Okay, I think there are no more questions. Thank you a lot for the time that you've spent with us on this call. I hope it was informational. And I hope that once the feature is out, you will get a chance to try it out, and experiment with it, and hopefully add it to your workload as a go-to tool. Uh, Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.